Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question is, can I analyze the interview of Elizabeth Holmes, published in the New York Times in May of 2023? Just a reminder, I'm not diagnosing anybody in this video, only speculating about what could be happening in a situation like this. If you enjoy this video, please like it, subscribe to my channel, and consider supporting me on Patreon. I will put the link to Patreon in the description for this video. First, I'll look at the background of this case, move to a summary of the article, then offer my analysis. Elizabeth Holmes is a failed technology entrepreneur who perpetrated a fraud involving about $800 million of investor money. In 2021, she was convicted of wire fraud and conspiracy to commit wire fraud. She was sentenced to 135 months in prison and was initially given until April 27, 2023 to start her sentence. Elizabeth appealed her conviction, which delayed her prison report date. Elizabeth has a romantic partner named William Evans. They have 2 children together. William is the heir to a San Diego-based hotel company that his family owns. On May 7, 2023, the New York Times published an article about Elizabeth Holmes, written by Amy Chozick. The article was based on an interview of Elizabeth by Amy and has led to some controversy. Some people believe that Elizabeth was up to her old tricks of manipulation and that Amy was a victim of Elizabeth's superficial charm. Now moving to a summary of the article. Much of this is paraphrased and I changed the order of some of these items. As I mentioned, the article is based on an interview of Elizabeth Holmes, which took place in San Diego over the course of a few days. During the interview, Elizabeth used a normal voice, which was a significant departure from her former unusually deep voice. Elizabeth suggested that she created a public persona so she would be taken seriously and not as a girl who didn't have good technical ideas. She has a point about being incorrectly characterized. Elizabeth was not a girl who didn't have good technical ideas. She was a woman who didn't have good technical ideas. The article reviewed Elizabeth's fall from grace. She had a medical technology company called Theranos, which gave her a net worth of about $4.5 billion, at least on paper. Over the course of a few years, she and her boyfriend, Ramesh Balwani, defrauded investors by misleading them about blood testing technology. Ramesh was sentenced to 13 years in prison and has already started serving his time, unlike Elizabeth, who keeps delaying what seems like the inevitable. The timing of Elizabeth's 2 pregnancies delayed her trial, but Elizabeth denied getting pregnant for that purpose, arguing that she never thought she would be indicted. The article covered a few items consistent with Elizabeth trying to portray herself as a good person and as a victim. Elizabeth mentioned how she volunteered for 12-hour shifts at a hotline designed for people who had experienced an assault of a sexual nature. Elizabeth indicated that she was a victim of this herself in October 2003, when she was in college. She attempted to connect this to her criminal behavior, arguing that after the alleged attack, she moved in with Ramesh and he helped her start the business. Elizabeth claimed that he controlled her every action, isolated her, and made her wear black turtlenecks. Elizabeth was indicted in 2018. The next year, she and her lover, William Evans, went on a 6-month road trip, traveling across the United States in a recreational vehicle. They parked in Walmart parking lots and campgrounds. They spent their time on Elizabeth's legal defense, yoga, and long hikes. I imagine that working on her legal defense involved more stretching than yoga did. The article talked about how Elizabeth did not get treated fairly in the media, like she was discriminated against because she was an ambitious businesswoman. Elizabeth felt as though she put a target on her back by making herself the poster girl for women in technology. This is an interesting position considering that Elizabeth intimidated journalists when she was running her criminal enterprise. In the article, she accepted responsibility for that behavior, although it is clear that in reality she did not. Reflecting on what went wrong with her business, Elizabeth appeared to blame getting too much attention. Without this abundance of attention, she said, quote, "we would have seen through our vision," unquote. So the attention that she was actively seeking is what destroyed her business and forced her into a massive criminal scheme. Elizabeth talked about how she had an idea related to COVID-19 testing and how, in prison, she will continue to work on inventions for the healthcare industry. Elizabeth said, quote, "I still dream about being able to contribute in that space. I still feel the same calling to it as I always did, and I still think the need is there," unquote. At the end of the article, the writer concludes that Elizabeth is not a hero or a villain, but somewhere in between. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts in a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. The writer of the article, Amy, talked about how she felt as though she was writing a story about two different people: Elizabeth, the brilliant inventor, and Liz, the mother of two. Amy mentioned how several intelligent and wealthy investors were manipulated by Elizabeth and implied that it would be wise to proceed with caution when dealing with her. Despite this, the writer was dazzled by the authenticity of Elizabeth and impressed by how sympathetic she was, describing her as gentle and charismatic. Amy talked about how her editor laughed at her when she brought this up and implied that she had been manipulated, like she was another victim of Elizabeth Holmes. I think this illustrates how just because a person is aware that someone is a scam artist doesn't mean they will be immune to manipulation. Elizabeth is effective at appearing authentic and playing the victim, even to those who are aware of her reputation and abilities. As I mentioned, Amy felt as though Elizabeth fell somewhere between hero and villain. This is actually a tremendous victory from Elizabeth's point of view. Here she is, convicted of serious charges, but still able to convince a reporter that maybe she is not so bad. Considering the starting point, creating the perception of being between hero and villain is quite an accomplishment. I don't think the reporter was completely manipulated because she demonstrated insight and awareness about Elizabeth's capabilities, but I do think that she was captivated by Elizabeth's superficial charm. If she spent too much more time with Elizabeth, she could have found herself under her spell. Item number 2. From Elizabeth's point of view, one purpose of the interview was to appear sympathetic. She is ready to perpetrate her next fraud, convincing people that not only is she a good person, but she still has a lot to offer the world of technology. She is trying to reframe Elizabeth Holmes as a character that she created. She even used those words, "character I created." She is trying to distance herself from her crimes by portraying her past self as a naive victim of powerful perpetrators. Her new persona, Liz, is who emerged from the experiences of Elizabeth. Liz is a completely different person, free of the tyranny which caused Elizabeth to repeatedly commit serious crimes, talk in a strange voice, and wear turtlenecks. In reality, there is no Liz. There is only the same fraudster, Elizabeth. By trying to use her manipulation tactics, Elizabeth is actually demonstrating how she has not changed from being a scam artist. Rather, she is simply changing the scam. I find it incredible how much Elizabeth invests in the gullibility of other people. She probably really believes that she will be given another opportunity to run a multi-billion-dollar corporation when she gets out of prison. Given her high level of self-confidence, maybe she can even start that business in prison. Instead of a self-made billionaire, she can be the first cell-made billionaire. Only an incredible, innovative entrepreneur could find a way to make $1 billion in prison. There is a tragic shortage of inmates looking to invest in technology startups, and very few prison programs available to address this critical issue. Item number 3. The fact that Elizabeth blamed her lover and conspirator, Ramesh, of manipulating her creates an interesting dilemma for her as far as creating a new character or persona. She wants to be thought of as a visionary who, despite lacking any technical knowledge, is poised to change the world. At the same time, she wants people to believe that she really doesn't understand much and is susceptible to being manipulated. Elizabeth said, quote, "I made so many mistakes, and there was so much I didn't know and understand, and I feel like when you do it wrong, it's like you really internalize it in a deep way," unquote. Elizabeth can't have it both ways. She can either present as a confident and capable technology pioneer or as a gullible victim who can easily be coerced into committing felonies. In reality, she is not either one of these. Rather, she is an incompetent fraudster. I find it curious how she was never a victim until she was indicted. Moving to item number 4. In the article, the reporter mentioned how Elizabeth invited her to come back and bring her family with her, saying that they could all go to the zoo together. Amy had enough insight to decline the generous offer. What Elizabeth did here is a good example of boundary crossing, a common tactic for people who have dark triad traits, that is, characteristics of narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Elizabeth does not genuinely want to get to know some reporter who is interviewing her. Rather, she wanted to convert her into an ally by pretending that they were friends. Elizabeth is pretty good at this. There were a number of people who wrote letters to the judge before her sentencing. These people talked about how caring, compassionate, and authentic Elizabeth was. It was like they really didn't know her at all. Elizabeth is a flexible manipulator. She can be aggressive, like she was to the journalist trying to cover her company, or overly friendly, like she was during the interview. Now moving to my final item, number 5. I think the theme that Elizabeth wants to convey from this interview is how she is full of potential. Her success story has not concluded. It just hit an $800 million bump in the road. If Elizabeth gets another chance to run a business, she will make good on her promise to revolutionize the world. She is not normal. She is exceptional. She has given people absolutely no reason to believe that she is exceptional, but from her point of view, they should believe it anyway because she was allegedly a victim. I suppose one could argue that Elizabeth is full of potential, not the potential to do good, but the potential to defraud people out of hundreds of millions of dollars. Those are my thoughts on the interview of Elizabeth Holmes published in the New York Times. Please put any opinions and thoughts in the comment section. They always generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found my analysis of this topic to be informative. Thanks for watching.